He ran out of ammunition. You can't go to the gates of hell if you don't have any ammunition to get you there. He's out of ammo. The Iranians aren't out of ammo. He's out of targets. The Iranians aren't out of targets. What happened is that Iran started putting the hammer down on Kuwait, hitting critical infrastructure targets. Kuwait was one or two more salvos of Iranian missiles away from dying as a nation state, losing all ability to generate fresh water through desalination plants were being destroyed, or generate power because the power plants were being taken off the grid. And had Trump initiated this conflict, then all of the oil production capacity of Ukraine would have been annihilated, along with Bahrain and perhaps even Saudi Arabia. The big wake-up call came when the Houthis struck a Saudi refinery. Again, there's people that have been on your show that like to talk about Ukrainians striking Russian refineries, and they say the devastation of it. Well, every single one of those Russian refineries gets brought back into service a week and a half later. It's a temporary disruption. The Houthi just struck a Saudi refinery. It went boom. It didn't go pop. It went boom. Compare and contrast the flames coming out. That place is off the grid for years. And now the biggest Saudi oil refinery was also struck as a warning sign. Donald Trump was told by his advisors that if you initiate this action, irreversible harm will be done to the global energy security regime. And it would be permanent harm to the Middle East. It would trigger not just economic catastrophe, but again, I just want to remind people that the oil doesn't just produce diesel and gasoline. That's how we see it in America. We look at high energy prices. Oh God, this is tough. Oil produces everything. People who are watching the show, look at your desk, look at everything's on your desk. Oil played a role in producing almost everything you have here. The crops that feed you, fertilizer comes from oil, sulfur, ammonia, byproduct of the oil refining process. When you shut down 25% of the world's ability to produce fertilizers, that means 25% of the world's agronomy isn't getting the fertilizers necessary to produce the crops necessary to feed the populations. We aren't just talking about an energy crisis where gas prices go up. We're talking about a global famine that's going to happen if Donald Trump did this. We're talking about Europe being overrun by hundreds of millions of desperate refugees. We're talking about Africa unable to sustain populations surging across into the Maghreb, into North Africa, fleeing into Europe, coming through Turkey into Europe because they are desperate. Again, a challenge I give to anybody in your audience: stop eating today. Just try it. Tell me how hungry you are tonight. You're going to be pretty hungry, but you'll be okay. Tomorrow, don't eat because there's no food. You're going to start to get grumpy because your body's going to start saying, hey, I'm hungry. I'm starting to consume myself. The third day, you're not going to be grumpy. You're going to be weak. You're going to be standing up, being a little lightheaded. On the fourth day, you realize that if you don't eat, you're going to die, which means you're going to do anything necessary to get food. On the first day, you're a civilized person. On the fourth day, you're an animal running around, murdering people to get their food, breaking into homes to get their food, because if you don't, you die. That's what's about to happen to a significant portion of the global population if they're denied access to food. They will starve to death, and when they starve to death, they're going to start to move to where the food is, and where the food is in Europe. And so I think, Trump has been briefed about this reality. And I think he understands that it's over. There's nothing he can do. Now, there may be Pete Hegseth one last, so let's go in with special operations forces and take the Ukrainian or the Iranian nuclear material. That'll just lead to a lot of dead Americans on the ground. There's no way this is going to succeed. Trump needs to preempt that now. We lost. It's over, Donnie, baby. Your gamble failed. You need to get out of this thing. And now he just has to find a graceful political exit.
When Trump told a reporter on Air Force One yesterday that we have an adequate supply of ammunition and equipment, and when Pete Hegseth said the same under oath to the Senate Finance Committee last week when it was asking for another $88 billion to fund this escapade, were they not telling the truth?
Quibbling. At West Point, you can be kicked out on the honor code, not by lying, but by quibbling, meaning that you know what the truth is, but you give an answer that isn't the full truth. That's quibbling. And they were quibbling. Do we have sufficient ammunition? Yes. We brought in, JDAMs, the old satellite guided bombs that we used in great effect in Afghanistan and Iraq. Because why? There's no air defense. So the airplane goes high enough, you could drop the JDAM and the satellite takes it over and guides it in. And if you, at a high enough L, you can drop that bomb, it can penetrate, tens of kilometers into enemy controlled territory, tens of kilometers. And so we're using JDAMs along with HIMARS and ATACMS to strike targets along the Iranian coast. And if you take a look at where these targets are, that's the primary target. So do we have sufficient ammunition to continue doing this? For the moment, yes. Although some of the ammunition, for instance, the precision strike weapon, I think we only had 90 of them and we used 80 of them. So we got 10 left. But we're running out of ammunition. The long-range strike weapons, however, are depleted, dangerously so. Now, could we draw down stocks in Europe and Pacific to continue the fight against Iran and at the same level of intensity? The answer is yes. But the Pacific commander is saying, if you ever think I'm defending South Korea from North Korea, you've already ruined my possibility because I don't have enough ammunition to last a week or two against a North Korean attack. In Europe, if the Russians ever decided that, screw it, we're going through the Saloiki Gap or we're cutting off the Baltics, there's nothing Europe can do, nothing NATO can do because the U.S. has no more long-range strike weapons. We've drawn it down to the point where it's dangerously low. So they're lying. Yes, we could sustain the conflict against Iran, but we would strip everything down to near zero capacity, which means we have no ability to defend our strategic interests in Pacific, no ability to defend our strategic interests in Europe. Moreover, it's not just our offensive weapons. We're running out of defensive interceptors. And this is the real problem, especially with Iran, but also think about North Korea and Russia, because the one thing we've always said is we can defend against these attacks. Well, you can't defend if you don't have any ammunition. We don't have any more THAAD ammunition. The high altitude interceptors, PAC-3 stuff is gone. PAC-2 stuff doesn't work. And so if we did have a fight with North Korea, they are going to use ballistic missiles to eviscerate everything we have and we can't defend against it. Russia will do the same thing against NATO and the United States targets in Europe, destroy everything we can't defend against because there is no defense. And this is what's happened in the Middle East. There is no defense. Donald Trump woke up to the realization that Iran can destroy anything it wants to, anytime it wants to, and there's nothing he can do. So even if he initiated this Gates of Hell operation, everything that's being used to sustain that will be destroyed by an Iranian ballistic missile force, which has not been harmed at all by anything the United States has done in this current military campaign.
What tricks does Netanyahu have up his sleeve for President Trump when they meet in the White House later today?
The biggest trip is this reversal that's taking place. Netanyahu and everybody, you remember Mike Huckabee gave an interview a while back where he talked about greater Israel, and someone said, well, doesn't that mean that I think Tucker Carlson said, doesn't that mean they're going to take all these Arab lands? He said, yes, of course, that's part of greater Israel. But the reality is Israel's getting its butt kicked. I mean, Hezbollah is just annihilating the Israeli army as we speak. Iran has proven the capacity of striking Israel, and Israel can't defend itself. Israel's in bad straits. Netanyahu is losing in the polls. He probably won't be prime minister going forward. Who knows? Somebody worse than him could be elected. But what Israel's doing to survive now is they've shifted their strategic focus from the greater Israel in the Middle East to creating strategic depth. And this is the danger of ongoing legislation that's in the House and the Senate right now that will effectively merge the United States military and Israeli military, United States intelligence, Israeli intelligence, into some sort of singularity yet to be fully defined. This means that Israel now owns the United States, that Israel has now, the parasite has taken over the host. And this is the danger. This is the ultimate trick that Benjamin Netanyahu has. He is basically taken a defeated nation in order to survive, created strategic depth by linking Israel and the United States as a singularity. It's the most un-American thing imaginable, but it's happening as we speak.
And what is he going to say to Trump to persuade Trump, A, to carry this out, or B, to resume the war?
Well,
more fake intelligence, like the war will be over in 96 hours, which is what he claimed when he visited Trump last in mid-February.
No, I don't think he's going to be able to sell that anymore because the United States lacks the capacity, and Israel hasn't demonstrated the capacity to operate independently. Remember, the only reason why Israel could attack Iran is because the United States was facilitating that attack, participating in that attack. The United States has just blown through its ammunition. Israel has no secondary supply of ammunition, so Israel will blow through it too. I think what Netanyahu and Trump are going to be looking forward to is a permanent state of chaos in the Middle East while Israel solidifies its control of the United States.
Wow. Does Iran have a weapon?
No. Iran doesn't want a nuclear weapon. This is the frustrating aspect of it, because you have a lot of people saying, if Iran only had a nuclear weapon, we wouldn't be where we're at. If Iran had a nuclear weapon, Iran wouldn't exist today, because the United States would have every reason to use a nuclear weapon against Iran. Because remember, Iran's not allowed to have a nuclear weapon by law. People say, well, they have every right. Israel has one. It doesn't matter. We're talking about the United States, coming up with a legitimate reason to strike Iran using nuclear weapons. The reason why the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, not once but twice, has refused to initiate nuclear strike options against Iran is he says it's against international law. It's an unconstitutional order. The whole concept of the not reciprocity isn't the right word. It's basically, if you kill more people to accomplish your mission than is legally justified, it's a violation of law, and there's no justification because Iran doesn't have a nuclear program. Hell, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, before she resigned, said as much in front of Congress. Now, if we change the script and say Iran has a nuclear weapon, now Iran becomes an existential threat to American allies and American forces in the region, and we can come up with a nuclear strike plan if that's the only thing left to remove it. So there is, this is the danger of this discussion. Iran doesn't want a nuclear weapon. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. Iran is not trying to produce a nuclear weapon. Iran won this war without a nuclear weapon. That's the thing that people don't quite get. Why would Iran want a nuclear weapon? It means they die. Iran just defeated 2 nuclear powers using conventional ballistic missiles. They won. It's over. They own the Strait of Hormuz. We're never getting it back. They shut down Bab el-Mandeb. We can't open it without Iranian permission. It's finished. And they did it without nuclear weapons. So why, at this moment of their ultimate victory, would Iran commit suicide by developing a nuclear weapon they don't want and they don't need?
Well, here's a slightly different view of this from our friend and colleague Larry Johnson on another show last night, number 14, Chris.
Iran has reached that proverbial fork in the road, that either the United States makes the necessary concessions that Iran is demanding to go back to the MOU and follow the MOU, adhere to it, or else Iran has decided that it has no alternative but to develop or deploy a nuclear weapon. Now, not use it, but to demonstrate, okay, we got it now, we have it, and if we're attacked, we can use it. That will be a complete game changer in the region.
I disagree. I mean, I don't know Larry's sources. I don't know if this is, analysis on his part, in which case I've put forward an analytical model that argues against it. If he's saying he has a source, I don't know the sources. I will say that, there's nothing coming out of Iran that suggests that Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapon. Again, there's no need for Iran to produce a nuclear weapon. A nuclear weapon would open Iran up. I can just tell you that if Iran develops a nuclear weapon, there is no more legal constraints against the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff greenlighting a nuclear strike plan against Iran. And this nuclear strike plan would be devastating because you have to eliminate Iran as a nuclear power, meaning you're not just striking potential nuclear production facilities, you're taking out regime targets, you're taking out the regime, you're destroying the nation state. It would be the total annihilation of Iran, justifiable under normal military thinking, because remember, and Larry, they're not allowed to have a nuclear weapon. They're not allowed to have it by law. They haven't gone through the process of withdrawing from the NPT. They are still a signatory of the NPT, and withdrawal from the NPT is not instantaneous. Look at the North Korean precedent. You have to declare intent, and it takes time to withdraw. So the second they declare intent, to do that, the United States has to assume that they are producing a nuclear weapon, and it
Right.
changes the legal and operational dynamic when it comes to nuclear war planning. So I respect Larry tremendously. You know it. We're friends with Larry. I'm still friends with Larry. I'm not saying I'm not friends with Larry. I'm just saying on this point, I disagree with him. I don't have access to his sources, so I can't fully evaluate his sources, but I think that the analytical framework to sustain this argument is fundamentally flawed.